Thank you all very much. Thank you.
1 month on since a historic Brexit agreement at the 11th hour, much is still in limbo for British businesses and the economy at large. But it's the European Union that's been in the post-Brexit limelight in recent days. This after it threatened to override a key part of the Brexit deal over delays in COVID vaccines from British manufacturer AstraZeneca. Joining me to discuss post-Brexit challenges and politics is Bloomberg News' Joe Mays. Joe, thank you very much for your time. So 1 month after Brexit, some of government's biggest fears about turmoil and disruption haven't come to pass, but we have seen some serious concerns about piles of paperwork and red tape for small and medium-sized businesses doing trade with the bloc. So Joe, how widespread and severe really are these problems for these companies?
Yeah, we know it's affected many companies. I mean, especially in sectors where there is lots of paperwork when dealing with the EU. So, for example, exporting fish, exporting meat, food products, that's been particularly affected. We know that traders moving goods into Northern Ireland, they've also been particularly hit by the new burdensome checks. And also consumers are facing the hit of paying extra customs charges when importing things from the EU. So it has been pretty widespread in terms of basically if you're any kind of company exporting or importing from the EU, you're having to deal with all these new processes. And, you know, there have been talk of it being teething problems, but if anything, these are permanent issues insofar as higher costs you have to pay to employ a customs agent, for example, to fill out paperwork for you. That will always be the case now going forward. So even if people do get more accustomed kind of mentally to these changes, there will still be these higher costs, which will be permanent. So yes, pretty widespread and pretty severe in terms of the extra cost they're having to pay.
So Joe, we've seen probably the biggest post-Brexit story unfold over the last week with respect to vaccines. The EU threatening to put up barriers and trigger emergency clauses because it felt shortchanged by British company AstraZeneca over vaccine deliveries. So what has this meant for relations in what was already a fragile post-Brexit arrangement?
Yeah, I think it's probably damaged a lot of trust and good feeling between the UK and the EU because of how, so quickly the EU moved to essentially override a key element of the Brexit deal and say they would potentially stop exports to Northern Ireland of the vaccine, invoking something called Article 16 of the protocol, which allows it to be suspended in certain circumstances. But yeah, so it shows how that was done very quickly without any notification to the UK. And yes, I think it has damaged relations, but it also shows how somewhat tenuous and controversial the Northern Ireland protocol of the Brexit deal itself is, and shows how it really was trying to come up with a solution to a very politically volatile question, which is, how do you avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland? And the protocol came up with a solution of having this border in the Irish Sea, a customs border. But as we've seen, that's a very controversial measure, and we've seen threats to the safety of border staff in Northern Ireland who are doing the checks that are required by the Northern Ireland Protocol. So I think we could see a lot of changes on this, and it isn't particularly stable. So that's certainly a worrying aspect of the Brexit settlement.
Many commentators at the end of December upon signing proclaimed that Brexit was now over, but it's not really, is it?
No, it certainly isn't. And the effects are being felt now, will continue to be felt. And there's still all these new committees that have been set up, which are still negotiating and agreeing how the agreement will actually be felt in reality for years to come. We'll talk about finance, that's still not settled. There are things like data adequacy, that's not been settled. There are still elements of the import checks that haven't yet come in, but they will come in July. So at the border, we're only seeing really half of what's going to happen because only exports to the EU have been hit by new border checks, but that will soon apply to imports to the UK as well. So yes, Brexit is certainly not over.
That's Joe Mays with Bloomberg News, also in London. Thank you very much for your time.